Hello and welcome. My name is Vukile. We are continuing to explore the fretboard. Now, as you can see the fretboard here, I've talked a little about a scale called the chromatic scale. When we did our if we do that, let's just do that anyway. On one string, if we do that, we put all the notes there on the string up to the next E. So it started from E up to the next E. This is called the E chromatic scale, and every semitone is covered here. So it's E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. It's called the E chromatic scale. You can pretty much do that with any string. The next string will be starting from B, including all the notes, to another B here, which is on the octave above the open one. And you do that with G, you can get the G chromatic scale. Now, I'll just show you one thing that if I go here and select all notes and delete them, and I'll show you the G chromatic scale, which is this one here. G chromatic scale. Now, what we want to do with this is called a G chromatic scale. Okay, that one there. Now let me tell you something. If you continue with this G here and you go on to there until you probably reach another G there. If you do that, and if we take our G as the G is the root here, so it becomes I've highlighted in red. So if you pick any scale, let's say this chromatic scale, and you start from G and you run your notes to an octave, you find it's called G chromatic. And if you start from G sharp to another G sharp here, you get the same intervals in between all the notes. So it's also called a G sharp chromatic scale. And from A to A, it's also an A chromatic scale. So that gives you what is called the modes of that scale. So if you pick a key, like we have picked a key which is G here, and we say what are the modes of the G chromatic scale. So the modes take the number or the name from the letter of the degree there. So G sharp chromatic scale, that's the second mode. The first mode is G chromatic scale, second one G sharp chromatic scale, the third one A chromatic scale, and the next one, which is 4, A sharp chromatic scale, 5 B sharp chromatic scale, 6 C sharp chromatic scale, 6 C chromatic scale, 7 C sharp chromatic scale, 8 D chromatic scale, 9 D sharp chromatic scale, 10 E chromatic scale. Oh, that was 9 actually, and 10. So 11 chromatic scale, F chromatic scale, and F sharp chromatic scale, and back to G. So that was 12. F sharp is 12. So you have 12 different different chromatic scales here within this band here. That means each note you're starting it from, like for example, if you start from C sharp, you end at this C sharp here. You have the same number of notes, and that are spaced equally apart. So this is an interesting scale, which is the chromatic scale. Now we are going to do it in this is called a linear fashion, or horizontal along the fretboard. Now we want to do this G chromatic scale so that it's playable across the strings. So we're going to edit this one, and I'm going to show you the same thing on the fretboard, across the fretboard. Select all notes, we delete them, and then we start all over again. Let's start with this method I'm going to use is going to have 5 notes per string, 5 notes per string, which is what I've written here, 5 notes per string patterns. So we are in the key of G, so it's going to be G. So we put 5 notes on each string, like that. Yes, 5 notes on each string. Now from D, you go to D sharp. So there is an idiosyncrasy there because of the tuning that we have. Now this is called, I'm gonna put this one as our root. This is very important because once you do this, and when we go into the next studying when we study the whole note scale and the major scale, it will be very interesting. This shape will be very nice, playing a very good role. Now what you can figure out in this is that in this shape here, which is the G chromatic scale, we have 3 roots, which is this G, G, G. Okay, so this is the first mode. If you go to the second mode of this one, so we're going to do all the 12 modes, which is G, G sharp A, A sharp B, C, C sharp D, D sharp E, F, F sharp, and back to G. Now you will see that they have all, because the notes are equally spaced, they all have the same shape. It's just the same shape. So what we do is, let's say no, we keep G as our root, and now we start from G sharp. So it goes all the way from G sharp to this G sharp here. That's the first octave, and from this G sharp to the next G sharp here, the second octave, and then G sharp A, A sharp B, C, C sharp. So this is the G sharp chromatic scale. The next, that's the mode, the second mode. The next mode, I'll give you the next mode. It's just I'm just doing it in a very simplistic manner so that you can see. So this is the A chromatic scale. Make sure you play them as it's a mode of the G chromatic scale. So as far as chromatic scales are concerned, each one is a mode of the other. Each one is a mode of the other, and each one is called a chromatic scale. So there's no point for me to change the key except to say, okay, where do we find, what chord do we find, what chord of G do we find in the shape for that mode. So this is what we find. Okay, now next shape is this. I'll show you. So this is A sharp chromatic scale. I'm just picking from where I'm starting here, and the next sharp will be B chromatic scale. Let's see, I'll show you that too. It will be like this. So, and what you can do is you can play these scales starting from this one here and ending with the B and then back up. You see, so this is the B chromatic scale, and the next one will be your C chromatic scale. Now notice the roots have changed. They are now here on the 5th string and on the 3rd string. Okay, so we move on to the next one, which is gonna be our so this is, once I finish, this is a C sharp chromatic scale. So you can play this scale. As you play, you'll be moving one semitone or one fret up, and you play it up and down, up and down, up and down. Okay, like that. So it's a way of practicing finger dexterity. Finger dexterity, you know. So this one here is called a D chromatic scale. It's a mod of the G chromatic scale. It's a mod of any of these, you know, degrees. So each one is a mod of each other, like we've said. Now we have three. When we speak of this key here, when we say because we've said we are in the key of G, we now have three roots. 1, 2, 3. These red ones. Now the next mode. Let's go to the next mode. The next mode. The next mode is called the D sharp chromatic scale. Okay, this is the next mode, and you have three roots here. You see, 1, 2, 3. Now these, as you shall see next time, those roots, as they feature like that, we'll see the chord that is in there. But at the moment, this is now the E chromatic scale, and we go on the next one. We'll see what will happen there when we remove that root there, and we have this one called the E chromatic scale. This is the F chromatic scale. Now, this kind of thing, if you see any scale that is symmetrical, it will have the same mods. The same mods. Now, this is the F sharp mod chromatic scale. You know, and if you remove, you go to the next, to the octave now. This is let me finish this and I'll show you. I'll tell you. Now this is the G chromatic scale. It's an octave above this one here. It's an octave above this one. You remember this one that we put here? So this is an octave above. So that's the chromatic scale. So we find out that if you have a chromatic scale and then you try to take the mods will also be called chromatic, because the chromatic scale is symmetrical and every note in there is covered, you know, between the octave, you know, within the octave. Let me say it that way. Every note is covered, so everything is, every note, if you start from any note, it's a chromatic scale. That's the names of those mods. Okay, so these chromatic scales are good for locating chords and for doing what I call 3-note per string, which we shall see as we go to the major scale. These shapes will be very helpful for us to construct those shapes, very beautiful shapes. And as you can see, the first thing that you do when you're doing a chromatic scale is to pick a key. Like in our case, we picked a key which is our root, which is G, and then you can base everything on that so that you can be able to cover all the notes within the music band, 1-octave band. And this is what we have for G chromatic scale. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna end here. Please subscribe, and you'll get some more. We'll come back to this with practicing this on the guitar so that you will see how it will go. Because the way you'll do it, for example, here you play this, you place your fingers. Let's say your 4 fingers here, and then this one will be, you slide using the small finger. So that will be finger number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. This finger number 4 or pinky will slide to B, and so on. Then you come back and do the same thing here. So it will ensure that you have some finger dexterity there. Practice. It increase your stamina. Okay, So this is the five note per string chromatic scale. Thank you very much. My name is Vukile. I see you in the next part of the chromatic scales.